Pleasant good evening to you. Good evening, Dominica, a woman pleasant. Good evening to you, wherever you're joining us from the north, the south, the east, the west, and everywhere in between. In Dominica, we want to thank you for joining us right here on Q95, the big station. If you're joining us from the Caribbean region, you're joining us from the rest of the world, it is wonderful to be back in your company for another episode of Roots Connections on Q right here on Q95, the big station, as we continue to explore the ever perennial question: how can we, Dominicans and friends of Dominica, at home and abroad, advance Dominica? And more importantly, or just as important, what role can each one of us play with this mission? And we see that our politicians in Dominica, especially today, they're coming out in masses. I think we can all agree that the walk today for free and fair elections in Dominica, I think we can all agree that it was a tremendous success. I think it is just about winding down at this point as we come on the air for Q95 Roots Connections. So I think we can all agree that it was a tremendous success as Dominicans on the ground continue to demand free and fair elections in Dominica. So we stand in solidarity with them. We stand in solidarity with those who remain on the front line, who are doing the work to secure the freedom and the democracy in Dominica. We also stand in solidarity with those who recognize that in order to effect the change we are seeking, Dominicans must become financially independent so that they are able to make important and independent decisions, including electing their government. So again, welcome to Roots Connections on Q. This is episode number 53 for today, Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023. And I am your host, Simone Mathieu. We have another packed program for you. We were expecting 3 guests. So far, we have 2 of them here. But this evening, we are talking about financial opportunities from our ever-evolving cultural industry. We are now seeing Dominicans making headway in the film, the opera, the theater, visual arts sectors of the economy. So what are the opportunities and challenges we face in pursuing these areas? As always, we continue to pray for our country, Dominica, and all the battles we continue to face. We're also grateful for everyone who continues to reach out. And as a matter of fact, I want to say a special good evening to Mr. Afi Mathieu. Mr. Mathieu, thank you for calling after the last program to make your contribution. So again, thank you for joining us for another episode of Roots Connections. Today, we are joined by Mr. Sobers Esprit, a man who needs no introduction. He's joining us from Dominica. He's a cultural icon, a development specialist, and a cultural administrator. And he's he's someone who always makes himself available to contribute to these conversations with regards to moving Dominica forward as it relates to our cultural industry. We're also joined by Miss Kanika Ambrose in Canada, and Kanika is of Dominican parentage. Her parents are from Maho. She is a playwright, a screenwriter, among other titles, and her last operatic production with the Canadian Orchestra has been described as magic realism. So you will certainly want to hear more about her work. We were also hoping to be joined by Mr. Dwight Winston, who is a nominee, Emmy Awards nominee for the 75th Annual Emmy Awards for his productions. But he did mention to me that he would be on set today, and he was not sure if he would be able to make it. So hopefully we're still keeping our fingers crossed that he will be able to join us at some point to make a contribution. So we are looking forward to hearing from all of our guests this evening as we create a path to success, and we continue to look at our cultural industries. But this evening in particular, we're looking at the visual arts, opera, theater sectors of the cultural industry. So let us welcome our guests as they unmute their mics. We want to thank them for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here with us. And we invite them to unmute their mics and to greet us and just kind of introduce yourself, anything you want to say. By the way, I have to mention that Maho is in the house this evening because Kanika's family is from Maho. And of course, we all know Soba's Esprit is Maho strong.
That's right.
So, of course, ladies first. Kanika, please tell us a little bit more about you as I go ahead and share the Facebook Live to our audience.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kanika Ambrose. I'm a playwright, an opera librettist, and a screenwriter. I also am associate artistic director of a theater company here in Canada, in Toronto. I'm also a mother of almost two. I'm a mother. I was going to say I'm a mother of two, but the other one isn't born yet. Yeah, so I'm really happy to be here to have with this conversation and to share what my experience has been and anything that's helpful to share with others. As I've said, I'm of Dominican parentage. I was born here in Canada, so a little bit of a different perspective.
Yes, thank you so much, Kanika, for being with us this evening. Soba Zasuri, we know you need no introduction, but anything you would like to contribute at the beginning of the program?
Well, first of all, thank you again, Simone, for the opportunity. It's always great to be in your company. We've had some really interesting conversations, particularly as it relates to the arts. Um, so, by way of introduction, just to say that, hey, these conversations are important because they help us to realize the great value that we can and we need to assert to art and culture in the evolution and growth of our society and our country, Dominica. But I am a Caribbean person by extension, so I would say in the region, because a lot of what we're going to be discussing tonight has great implications for not just Dominica, but for the region. So art and culture is really just critical for our future growth in terms of identity, but in terms of building a stronger and more robust economy, getting young people engaged and involved, but also using our creativity and the skills that we have and that we possess to build new products and to expand our reach to wider audiences, not just in the region, but across the globe. And so I have been playing a role in that respect as an administrator over the last, 2-3 decades in culture and the arts, but also, as you know, I worked in tourism as well. But so I think it's important that we continue to have this conversation. So thank you for having me. And great to connect with Kanika because, as you say, we both from Maho. And I say she's from Maho because her mom and dad are from Maho. And so it's really that's great that the two of us, just connect tonight. I recently met her dad and we had long conversations, which we normally do whenever we meet. So nice to have you as well, Miss Ambrose. Good.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, and we had met. We had met a long time ago when I was a child. We
That's
met
right.
a long
Yes.
time ago.
So
Yes.
nice to connect with you again. Good.
Yes, you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here for this very important program. And, we also want to thank those who connect us to our guests. So a very special thank you to Miss Lauren Delsol for connecting us with Kanika this evening. So again, everyone, thank you for being here for another episode of Roots Connections. This is our number one program for featuring the people, the organizations, the new and ongoing projects and initiatives which are geared towards moving Dominica forward, especially as it relates to securing financial opportunities for our brothers and sisters at home and abroad, because we must continue to convert that passion we have for Dominica into action for Dominica as we continue to navigate this ever-changing, ever-evolving world. We are grateful to you, our audience who are listening on Q95 FM radio. We are grateful to our Facebook and YouTube live audience. We are live on Facebook at Q95 FM radio and Push Past 10, and we are also live on YouTube on Q95 FM radio. So a lot of different ways to connect connect with the program this evening, don't forget to share the live and click the notification button to find out whenever we go live. And for the best in daily programming, you can hop on over to q95da.com for our live and our repeats of the program. For example, our last episode of Roots Connections, we talked about with the serious scrutiny which is threatening the collapse of the CBI program. We must continue to ask, what is the way forward for growing Dominica's economy? So again, that is q95da.com for all the up-to-date programming, all our live and our recorded programs. We are always grateful to Mr. G and the Q95 family for having us on every second and fourth Wednesday as we continue to tap into the human resources of our Dominican brothers and sisters, and we work on reversing that brain drain that Dominica and the Caribbean region have experienced over the last few decades. Lambi, we're always happy to have you on the console. Thank you for being here. Our engineer, Mr. Sherwin Norris, as well as DJ Sean in the background. So as we continue with our Invest in Me, Invest in Us theme this year, we are still working on that strategic plan to build the capacity we need to secure the future of Dominica. So as we get started with the program, if you're just joining us, this is Roots Connections on Q, and we are discussing financial opportunities from our ever-evolving cultural industry, because we are seeing that Dominicans and descendants of Dominicans are making headway in the audiovisual, film, and theater sectors, and what are the opportunities and challenges. So I think where I would like to begin this evening, Sobers and Kanika, is with, I'm not sure if you, Sober, saw that Asa Bantan had a major breakfast fete in Grand Bay. And while we may disagree with all this nasty business music that is coming out of Dominica, I think we cannot deny that music and culture is very important to growing our economy. So let us just go ahead and get started. I will get started with Kanika. So you can just tell us a little bit about how you got into this particular industry. Was it something that was maybe a hobby of yours and then it became your career? So just kind of walk us through your journey a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So, anybody who's familiar with my dad knows that he's a very musical person. He does drumming like djembe. He does dub poetry. He writes his own poetry. So from a very young age, even though we were living in Canada, my parents placed a really high importance on preserving and passing on our cultural heritage onto me. They tried with my brothers too, but it worked better for me. So I was involved in Caribbean cultural dance classes from the time I was 2 or 3 years old. And I would also perform with my dad. I performed with my dad in his dub poetry, and with the Dominica Association here in Canada. I was involved in the dance groups there, and would sing, and any kind of involvement that there was, I was involved as a young child. So it started with that. It started with cultural events here in Canada. Then when I went into high school, I didn't realize what I was doing was actually theater until the drama teacher in high school told me, hey, you know that what you're doing there, it's theater. And so she asked me to join the drama club. And I did. And I started to write my own monologues, my own pieces to perform. And I performed them in the Black History Month assemblies and then in the school plays. And then the things I started writing started winning awards in high school. So one of the awards, I think when I was in grade 11 or 12, I think 11, so almost finished high school, was to go and perform in a professional theater festival. And that's when I saw that there was an opportunity for this to be a career when I was about 16 years old. And so I decided to pursue it as a career. And my parents encouraged me. I told them, hey, I want to be an actor and a writer, and I want to go to art school. And they didn't deter me from that. So I went and I got my university education as an actor. And in the meantime, I continued to write and perform my own work around the city. And then from there, that's it. I just continued to perform. Eventually, I decided I didn't want to be an actor anymore, and I wanted to focus all my energy into becoming a playwright. And I did. I also had a great love for opera that I started going to the opera as a teenager. There were programs in the schools that would take us to opera, and I really caught on with it. And I kept going to free programs, and there was lots of initiatives for youth to go and see it. So I would see it for free for many years. So yeah, so once I decided I didn't want to be an actor anymore and focus on playwriting, I got an opportunity from a company here to also pursue and explore opera libretto writing, and that became something that was really like stuck with me and something I really fit well with. And that company decided to commission, support, pay for my first opera. So that's the journey so far. I've also worked in arts administration. So I've worked for theater companies in administration, in artistic leadership, because artistic producer, artistic director, programming other people's work, um, as ways to support myself as I built my career, and also as a passion as well. Yeah, that's the journey, kind of.
Fantastic, fantastic. Congratulations on the successes today. And so, as we already have so much to unpack just based on what Kanika is saying, because she talks about passing on her parents, passing on our culture to her.
Right.
Although
Yeah.
she did not grow up in Dominica, she taking ballet classes, even if she wasn't in Dominica, just immersing her in the culture so that she knows her identity. She knows where she comes from. She also talks about her parents not discouraging her, but encouraging her, and then having that path to make this a
Right.
career. So what is your feedback so far, Sobers?
Yeah, I mean, so that is one of the challenges that we are faced with, not just in Dominica, but throughout the Caribbean, creating pathways for people in the arts, where art and culture can be a profession, can be a career. We I mean, clearly that is not encouraged in the Caribbean for the greater part, except maybe in music to some extent. That is probably the area where we have some competitive advantage globally. But in the other areas like theater, like film and fashion and design, no, people think those things are hobbies, things you can do on the side. And so we have always discouraged young people to go into those areas as careers. And so we see it in terms of the education system. We are not providing enough opportunities in terms of educating this generation and future generations in the arts. We have very, very little education in terms of design in our school system. And I'm talking about even basic arts classes in our school system. The drama programs are really very few and far in between, and so that is the problem. That's one of the crucial problems we face. So one is in terms of the education and training opportunities that we lack. Two is we do not see art and culture as an opportunity for career development. And three, as a society, we think that art and culture is not particularly relevant. It's not a viable option for us to build our economy. So I think these are some of the challenges. These are some of the problems that we are faced with, and we have to change that mindset going forward. And I think we are getting there. There is a certain kind of consciousness about that, but we have a lot of work to do. The reality is, if we're going to change that mindset, if we're going to get on to that next step forward, there is going to have to be a lot of work insofar as doing that. So here is why. I think the question we have to ask ourselves in Dominican and Caribbean: why are we talking about art and culture? As you said, you say financial. We say how that we can monetize them then, instead of being a hobby, instead of being a side thing. Why are we talking about that in this day and age? Well, we're talking about it for number one, this is a $1 trillion industry.
Yep.
Globally, creative and cultural industries accounts for well over $1.6 trillion annually
And
out
that's with a T, not a B, a T.
at T. Two, creates millions of jobs across a wide range of professions, from writers, producers, directors, technicians, accountants, and attorneys, and related fields. Four, it is one of the fastest growing sectors in the global economy, outperforming most sectors in the global economy. In fact, the stats shows that the sector grows on average by 8%. Most sectors don't grow by, by 2 and 3% each points, you know. And so, and the other thing is that to recognize that arts and culture, or the cultural industries, and let me just use the term cultural and creative industries, is part of an emerging sector, a major global sector, which is the knowledge or digital economy, which is the biggest and the largest sector in the world today.
Yep.
You know, and so we are really in the post-industrial revolution time. We are in the digital era, and so our talent, our creativity must be harnessed for us to build an economy, to build a stronger society, to create products and services that the world can in fact consume, but also to give us a greater sense of who we are, and to stand up and to be proud as people in the global community. And we are seeing it. Caribbean people have in fact given to the global stage a fair amount in that sector. Again, is it music with people like Bob Marley and the Wailers, with people like Rihanna in recent times. But even in Dominica, Dominican artists, Dominican musicians have performed, have outperformed, in fact, original counterparts in the music. When you see where Canas Lipso has gone to, where we see what Bunyan is doing. However, and we're seeing in the visual arts, and performing arts, people like Alwyn Bully, with tremendous assets too.
Yeah, and I wanna
You
I
know,
wanna come
so
back.
yeah,
Yeah, I want to come back, Sobers, because I want to talk about. I know you're, correct me if I'm wrong, the spokesperson of the Alwyn Bully Foundation, the
yes.
Dr. Alwyn Bully Foundation. So I want to come back and
Mm,
talk to you about that. But let me just go back to Kanika for a
mm,
little while, because Kanika, I know that you've taken several trips to Dominica, and given the path that you have journeyed on so far, if you were to advise maybe the government, the officials in Dominica, in terms of creating a similar pathway for someone like you who was passionate about art and theater from the beginning, is there anything you could recommend to them in terms of nurturing other young people? Because one of the things we like to do with this program is not only just reveal financial opportunities, but also provide hope to our young people, because our young people need hope and guidance and direction. So what would you say if you were to advise anybody in authority about just, doing a little bit more for our young people?
Mm-hmm. So if I heard that there's not many programs in schools, I think that's the first major issue. If it's not nurtured, if it's not nurtured being nurtured in the home, and it's not being nurtured in the school, it there's nowhere for it to go in a young person. So I think that's the first step. There needs to be exposure at a young age in schools, and if a student or some students show an interest and a passion and a talent and inclination, that needs to be invested in. And it doesn't cost much for a young person, to send a young person somewhere for an event, for a festival, for some kind of cultural exposure. There's lots in the Caribbean to make that investment. So I say, if it is being seen, it needs to be nurtured at a young age, and it needs to be young person needs to see that it can be lucrative for them, that it is a career option. Because if you don't know that it's a career option, you won't think of it.
Right.
So I would say those are the first steps that need to be taken. I
Mhm.
don't know what the funding structures are, or if they're how people get funding for the arts. I'm able to apply, like, if I have an idea for a project, I can apply to a government body here and get some money to work on it, so that I have time to work on it. I don't know if that's something that is available as well, but that's it's key, because if we don't have time to work on things, then we don't work on it. There's no time. You need there the facts are, like, in the world we live in the capitalist society, we need funds for things. So if it's not funded, then it is a hobby. It has to be a hobby, because you have to have some other kind of jobs in order to sustain yourself. um, I, my entire income comes from the arts, and it has for a long time, over a decade, I would say. So, if that's not something um, that can be replicated, that can happen, then it can't be a full profession for somebody.
Mhm. Absolutely. Sobers, I'm just happy that Kanika said 100% of her income comes from the arts. Because think about it, Sobers, how many musicians, for example, in Dominica, we've had 20, 30 years in the business, and they still
50
have a regular
years, 50
job,
years,
and they
50 years.
still have a regular job. So,
That's
so
right.
are you encouraged that we will see some Kanikas in Dominica where they will be able to pursue art and music and theater as their careers? When you look at simple things like the Arak House of Culture still not even being completely rehabbed at this point, so that the night box that you guys just did had to be performed at the Goodwill High School.
Yeah. So that's why I said earlier that if we are going to be world class, if we are going to compete with the rest of the world, because basically that's what it is. We have to compete with the rest of the world. We're not competing with ourselves, and let's understand that. So when we do something in Dominica, that is not enough. It has to have a wider reach and a wider impact. So there are several things that we have to do, and we are very established in the school system, education. We have to invest more in education and training, have programs in the schools, give scholarships to young people to go and pursue studies in the arts, the same way we do in medicine or in business and finance, which is great, and STEM. But we have to have artists, we have to have cultural workers as well. And so we need to send more young people overseas to study because we do not have the training facilities in Dominica. So that is clearly one of the imperatives for us, the education sector. But the funding has to be available too, and a structured, um, an open funding system that allows artists and art entrepreneurs to have access to this funding. That there's no problems in accessing those funds when they are available for the arts and culture. So we need to create an arts foundation, an art fund in Dominica to support and to sustain the work of artists. That's sort of one of the things. But also, we have to build a whole cadre of persons to support the art, the sector. So we have to build a stronger and more robust ecosystem around art and culture, not just music or film or visual arts, but just the entire ecosystem in support of art and culture. That is to say, the human resource. That is to say, the spaces that we require for us to perform and to produce and to manufacture stuff. That is to say, we have to have the technology and the investment in new technology that enables our artists to connect with the rest of the world much easier and much faster. That is to say that we have to have intellectual property laws that are
Mhm.
enforceable, that provides opportunity for us to earn from our intellectual property assets. Because I understand the artists, a lot of artists now create stuff and they are not rewarded in any significant way for the work, because people infringe on the copyright, people take it and they do anything that they want to do. So all of those issues we have to put into place in order for us to be able to have a strong cultural industry.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just looking at Kanika and I'm just, I'm so impressed because I'm just thinking to myself, first of all, chances are she would not have had this opportunity if she was born and raised in Dominica. We have to be truthful. We have to be honest.
But I
Right.
mean,
But look at the promise and potential of Kanika. So I'm holding her up as an example of what is possible if we invest in our young people. But in my mind, I'm also thinking, but we're regressing. Because when we don't even have the Arak House of Culture, a place where you can put on a production, and
Mhm.
I heard the interviews on the radio for promoting the event, because the event, the Night Box, which the Dr. Alwyn Bully Foundation put on, I think it was August 13th, and I just heard about the struggles, about having to bring in the lights, bring in the set, bring in the chairs, because the place where the play was being put on was not a real theater. So in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, good for Kanika. I'm holding her up as an example of what is possible. But then in my mind, I'm also thinking we are regressing. So we're not even at base level. We've dropped back from base level in terms of the potential of theater in Dominica.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's really
I
unfortunate.
alluded to that. The fact that if we want to be globally competitive, if we want to be world class, one of the things that we have to invest in is the spaces. We cannot art can't flourish without proper spaces for artists to perform, to rehearse, to manufacture the work, and so on. So that is something that we have to do, and it's not just spaces in the capital city either,
Mhm.
or only. So it's not just our house of culture. I want to see those spaces in Maho, in St. Joseph, in Grand Bay, in Marigot, in the Kalinago territory. We have, so that is one of the major imperatives for us going forward. 40 years ago, we could have done it outside and performed. But today, in today's world, it is vastly different. What is required is much more. We need to do much more. And so the onus is on us as a society, us as a country, to recognize the value of investing in those facilities, and making those facilities be top class as well. We've been not be at the level of Canada or the United States, but at least we have to have the most basic facilities in those spaces to allow our artists to be able to compete. At least that's as basic as that.
Yeah, yeah, and the importance of training as well, training our performers. So, Kanika, let me come back to you because we also want to talk about honing your skills, right? So, you're passionate about something, you no longer want it to be a hobby, you want it to be a career. So, tell us about the importance of training, the importance of discipline, the importance of perseverance, when difficult times came about for you. And then, of course, we want you also, when we come back during the next round of questions, to tell us about your productions as well.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so to start with training, um, you don't have to go to a formal, you don't have to go to a university or college to have training. You have to do some sort of training. I decided to go to the university route because academics were important to me as well, and there were other. I wanted that round education as well. And also, for me at the time, I thought it was important to have that degree. I think it is. I think it was still important because I got to learn things um, that formed my ideas as an artist, even though they aren't certainly things that I want to do now. But certainly I can go back and say, oh, okay, Shakespeare, oh, okay, Chekhov, and I can reference things and bring it into my work or or go against it in my work. So So that was important. But there are also, you can train at other at organizations. I also trained I trained in Bella with Addie Henderson and Grand Bay of Tradibel. That's training too, and that's important training. It doesn't have to look like, A plus B equals C, and I went to a 4-year program. I also trained at other companies that were for Caribbean artists called like one was Be Current in Toronto, where they have a summer arts training program. So it keeps connected to the culture. So while you're getting that Western kind of European training, also supplementing it with training that was connected to my roots and culture. Um, so training's super important. It helps formulate your ideas and who you are as an artist, and your skills. It makes the work stronger. I also recently finished a screenwriting training program. Um, yeah, as an adult and a mother, I went back and I trained. I was interested in screenwriting, and I was working in television already, but I wanted to hone my skills and make sure that I knew what I was doing. So it's something that can be ongoing. Um, in terms of struggles, I think the reality is, and a reason why parents and people do discourage young people from going in the arts, is it does take a while to build a career, and to reach the level of success that you see now. Like I'm in my early 30s now, and I've been pursuing this since I was a teenager, and only now am I winning the awards and receiving all the accolades and having my work presented on large scales and in large 1,000-seat theaters. That wasn't the reality the whole time. But that's a lot of professions. Like a lot of professions, it takes till your late 20s, early 30s to get to where you want to be, or even longer than that. So it takes years of study, it takes years of practice, it takes years of putting yourself out there and trying things in front of an audience and getting feedback, and skill building. So yeah, there were certainly times. um, I put on a one-person show in my mid-20s, and I was expecting, God, that's the one that's going to put me on the map. I'm going to make it, and it didn't. Like a lot of people came, and it got some good press and it got some good accolades. But at the end of the day, I was still where I was. So that was discouraging at the time. I was like, oh, I'm 24, I'm 25, I'm supposed to make it by now. And you have these ideas in your head of when that timeline is that you're supposed to make it. And also I had other goals, other than life goals. Like I wanted to own a home, I wanted to get married, I wanted to have children. I have done all of those things. But the ups and downs of a career in the arts, sometimes you have to have the fortitude to say, okay, how can I continue on this career path, even if there's a low? How can I continue to sustain myself? You have to get creative. So I worked in arts institutions, not necessarily as an artist, as an administrator, for a number of years to get myself stable so that I could own a home, so that I could have a family as well. And on the side, continuing to train and to build my body of work. So it's a lot of extra work. I wake up early in the mornings and write. I'd be writing late at night. Anytime I had vacation time, I would be writing. I wouldn't be going on vacation. And so um it is a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of sacrifice, and it's a lot of mental fortitude, and just keeping your eyes on what the goal is,
Yeah.
and knowing yourself and knowing the value of your work. And the truth is, I knew that there was a gap in Canadian theater in representation at a certain level of Caribbean stories. So I knew that my work was going to be filling an important void. And so I continued to push for it, knowing that it was important and that there were communities that needed to see themselves represented and their stories represented, and needed space on a professional theater level. So that's what was keeping me going. Is I was like, no, I know my work is good. I know my work is important. I know it matters to people, and so I kept pursuing it. And that's it. You just have to have that in your mind. Is like, what is your purpose, and who is it for?
Mhm.
and that keeps it going for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, guys,
Yeah.
I'm trying to not
Yes.
let the cat out of the bag. But when you hear the concept that Kanika has created, I was complimenting her before the program.
Mm.
You will see why this is her purpose. So she has turned her passion into her purpose because it is a concept that I don't think anybody else has thought about. So I can't wait for you to hear more details that you will tell us. But sobers training, the importance of training, the importance of having that support system, because as Kanika said, with everything that she just described, being disciplined, right? Having the mental fortitude, a lot of that support came from her family. So
Mm-hmm.
having that family, that
Mm-hmm.
community, even that government support. So let us talk about if there are any opportunities for training that can help our young people in Dominica, maybe regionally, maybe not necessarily in Dominica,
Mm-hmm.
but at least have opportunities on a regional level to pursue arts and culture as a career. And you know, let me just read a quick comment because we have Booyah legend Derek Rapiders on the Facebook Live, and you can sense his frustration because he too has been in this cultural industry for over what 30, 40 years, right? You can let us know. And he says it has become so annoying to be talking so much time and time over, yet nothing is being
Mm-hmm.
implemented. And rightfully speaking, we make one step forward and 10 backwards. So here we have a cultural icon from Dominica, and he's venting his frustration
Mm-hmm.
because he's thinking that, you know, after all these years,
That we
they
should be
should
far. Yeah, we should have been
pathway.
far. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You, you know, so let's talk about this, Sobers. Let's talk about
Yeah.
training and let us talk about frustration.
Well, we have a lot of that
We
we
have a
can
lot
talk
to talk
about,
about.
but we will keep that one for the conversation. No, but
Okay.
yeah, I think Kanika has described it well. The training can be at different levels. So
Mhm.
clearly, the formal university level, and we have seen some Dominicans who have been sent out to the training or on their own who have been out training in theater, in dance, in visual arts, um, mainly those areas. But we can do, as you said, we can do short term. We can expose our people to short term training, um, either through the formal system, through government programs, but through organizations, through community based groups. I think so. So part of it is we have to rethink the strategy in terms of how we work for those things. So one, we expect the formal government support in those areas, but I think part of it too on the other side is we need to see a more active art movement in Dominica as well, taking on some of those roles, playing some of that important function in delivering training, in delivering opportunities. Because let us understand, you spoke about it earlier, that in some ways we have regress because in the 70s and the 80s, maybe towards the early 90s, we had some powerful community groups and we had some powerful national groups. I mean,
Mhm.
People's Action Theatre, Aquarian Expression, Whitey Kubuli Dance Theatre Company, Steve Hyacinth New Dimension Theatre, Movement for Cultural Awareness. Dominica has some powerful organizations and groups. They're providing training, they're providing opportunities and exposure to a wide number of young Dominicans. Somewhere along the line, we've lost that. Somewhere along the line, we dropped the ball in some ways. And so part of it is we have to advocate for that, more of that at the national level, at the state level. But also we have to advocate for us as cultural workers, as activists, to be more engaged, to rebuild again, and to fashion a new kind of cultural movement. It wouldn't resemble what happened in the 1970s with People's Action Theatre or Whitey Kubuli. It may be very different. But I think part of what we have to address is we ourselves must take ownership, take responsibility to do some of that work. So that is clearly one of the things that we have to rethink, because Because if not, we're going to be blaming and blaming for the rest of our lives. And
Mhm.
I don't think we have the energy or anything else to continue doing that. So let us forge a new kind of partnership. Let us try to build back. So one of the things that we have put forward is the Alwyn Bully
Yes, I was just about to ask you to tell us more about that foundation,
right.
please.
So one of the main reasons for Alwyn Bully Foundation is obviously to help to honor and to make sure that we recognize the value of this man's work. This man really contributed not only to Dominica's cultural development, but also the region and the world. He was an important player in that thing. But we also think that there are other things that we have to do. So we have to play. We think that we need to play and must play a role in advocating for new set of policy on culture and cultural industries. That's one. We have to advocate for opportunity for training and development in the arts. And we have to develop programs, that is the foundation itself, that enables cultural workers, artists, and people in the arts to work together to create and to find ways in which we can amplify the work of Alwyn and to give greater voice to the stories that we have as Dominica. But Canada would say said it very well, because we have stories to tell, but we're not finding the ways to tell those stories. So we want to serve as a platform to being able to do that. And we think that we can best do that by one, working with obviously the official DOM, but two, in partnership with other organizations, locally and regionally. There are organizations in the region that are ready and willing to work with us. And so we will forging those kinds of alliances and building collaboration with them. But we have to come up with some new ways of doing things. And so part of what we are trying to do now is to unravel through the processes to get to this new creative thinking to how to build back a strong cultural industry.
Yes, thank you for that. And let us already begin by talking about the production. So, Kanika, can you just tell us about some of your productions and when you finally started making headway in terms of your productions?
Yeah, so not my first play, but the play that's gotten the most accolades and awards recently is called Our Place, and it is about two Caribbean women who are working illegally, or without documentation, undocumented, in a Caribbean restaurant in Scarborough, which is Scarborough is a part of Toronto. And there's a lot where I grew up in Scarborough, Toronto. There are a lot of Caribbean restaurants. And I happen to know somebody who was in a situation, a family member of my husband's who was deported, and another woman who married somebody she had just met in order to gain legal status. So that play was exploring the ramifications of um, having to marry for legal status and some of the struggles of Caribbean people trying to immigrate to Canada and some of the barriers that the Canadian government has imposed that make it difficult for people from certain places in this play, the Caribbean, to immigrate, and having to have them make these difficult choices and compromises in order to gain a better life. So that was that play. Is even though it's a heavy topic, much of it was a comedy because Caribbean people were always have levity and humor even in difficult subject matter. So it's funny until it wasn't, and then so that one I just won actually one of the highest awards you can get in Ontario, Canada for the arts for that play. Um, and it was actually supposed to premiere a few years ago, but because of the pandemic, it premiered later. It premiered in November 2021. So that's that one. And then Oh my goodness, just this past March. It seems like so long ago, but it was this year. This past March, my opera called Of the Sea premiered at one of the larger theaters in Ontario and Toronto. And that opera was about, um, oh man, it's
Yes.
about,
So I want everyone to pay very close attention to what Kanika is about to say, because I don't think this concept, as far as I know, maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think this concept has ever been presented. So Kanika, go ahead.
yeah. So I created an underwater magical world where the enslaved people who were tossed or jumped overboard during the Middle Passage um, created underwater life and have birthed these underwater kingdoms where they come to life and are kings and queens and powerful people under the water. So it's the story about a father who jumps overboard and takes his baby daughter, and when he awakens into the underwater kingdom, he realizes that he's made a mistake and he wants to get his daughter back up to the surface, to the sun god, to give her life back. So he goes on this voyage to find people who want to rebel and take back their lives on the land again and become living people again. And so they create these towers and they climb up to the surface. And in the end, I don't know if I should give away, but in the end, they emerge and realize that they are and always will be part of the water. And some of them have different reactions. Some of them are enraged and they create hurricanes, they create storms, and some of them become the creatures in the depths of the sea. So the whole kind of hypothesis of that is that the seas are forever changed by the bodies of our ancestors, and the matter of those bodies are not forgotten.
I can see why it was called magic realism, Kanika, because I mean that, and I want to get Soba's impressions on this because I saw him smiling because he too was impressed. But you know, it is so fascinating when I listened to another interview that you did that Lorraine Delson sent me, and again, Lorraine, thank you for that. And it talked about the fact that we've always explored our African ancestors before the Middle Passage journey. We explored their lives when they got to the Caribbean and the USA and the other places that we were enslaved. But no one has thought about what you just told us about. Those who leapt off the ship, those who were thrown over during the Middle Passage. And here you are with your creativity coming up with the thought of the people who fell to their death in the ocean and creating this magical story. I'm saying this and I'm getting goosebumps, honestly. This magical story about them regaining a kingdom, because we all came from kingdoms in Africa, creating that kingdom underneath the water, right? Where we're still kings and queens. So I thought it was fascinating, and congratulations, Kanika. I want to find out from you what the reaction to that
Yeah.
particular
Yeah.
opera has been. But Sobers, I want your reaction.
Well, I mean, clearly, it also, I mean, if we look at give it different kind of perspective, one is the connection that we as Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean people has had with if our seas and the waters. I mean, the sea is now an important part of the not just the way we connect with each other as as a Caribbean society, but also it gives us sustenance. We have the blue economy, which is so important for us now in these times, and we see the great value of again utilizing the resources around us to enhance our livelihoods, to enhance our civilization. So I think from that perspective, I mean, great. But again, I think what it does talk to is the fact that we have stories in the Caribbean that we can tell to the rest of the world that
Yes.
is unique, that is different,
Our stories are important. They're
and they're
unique and different because
important.
look at how she talks about the
That's
immigration
right.
situation. So many people can identify with
That's
that
right.
story, and it's not being
Right.
told.
And it's not
Yeah.
being told. but it's also have to be told to in a manner and a form that entertains, that educates and enlightens people as well. Because again, if we're talking about an industry, there has to be that element of how we package that, how we sell it to the rest of the world. Because we see what is happening in Hollywood and in Bollywood and in Nollywood, and we can talk about been talking about film and the audiovisual sector. We see what has been happening in those parts of the world. They are telling their stories in their own unique ways and their own unique styles. And so we are compelled now in the Caribbean to begin to do that.
Yes.
And so people like Kanika and others who have started that process. And the truth is, the film industry in the Caribbean is a growing industry. It's an emerging industry. It's not a big industry as yet. But what we need, just like what we need to see in fashion and theater, we have to be able to develop the capacity to tell stories and to produce works that the world will want to see and will want to consume. So that is a challenge we are faced with now. And so these conversations that we're having is really about how do we fashion and build an industry that can take our creativity and our geniuses and to monetize them so that we can have a better way of life and sustain ourselves. We know that's not going to be easy because in our part of the world, this is an emerging sector and
Yes.
it'll take some time. It's going to take some time, you know. But with the passion comes, as you say, the purpose and the action with it. So we have to have all of those things put together. So our challenge, our major challenge now is how do we work together? How do we create together and to build products that the rest of the world will want from us as Caribbean people, as Dominicans? The same way we saw in the 70s and the 80s for our music. We can do the same thing again.
Yeah, and also how do we provide the space for someone as talented and brilliant as Kanika to come in and be a consultant in our cultural industry? How do we provide the space so that she can come in and walk us through the process of how this can be done? Because that is just two stories that Kanika has told us about. Can you imagine the amount of stories we can create out of just Dominica? We haven't even touched the region, but just out of Dominica, just out of the immigrant journey, out of Dominica, the different things we have experienced being immigrants in foreign countries. So there's so many stories to be told. But, later down in the conversation, I also want us to talk about the importance of the digital revolution, because that too plays an important role in everything that we are talking about. But let us take a quick break. Let's go over to the studios, drink some water, rest the voices as we invite our callers to join the conversation. So Lambi, let me come over to you. And then guys, just make a note if anyone calls and you want to make a comment about what they said, just make a quick note. Lambi, over to you.
Yeah, good evening. You tune to Root Connection Q95. We are taking your phone calls now. Let me give out those numbers. 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. These are all local numbers. The overseas number or the international number is 305-432-9624. Let me run those again. 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. And back to you, Simone.
Yes. And in case you joined us late, we had a phone call.
Yes, we have a call on the line. Caller, please go ahead. Call on the line, please go ahead.
Good evening.
Okay, that person shied away, so
Very
let's
good
continue. When he comes
program.
back, we'll
I've been
let
Oh,
you
I
know.
think we can hear her, Lambi. We can hear her.
I've attended a few.
Oh, we were hearing her, Lambi. Maybe she'll call back because we could hear her. So caller, please try again because we could hear you. I'm not sure why the studio couldn't hear you, but please try again. So again, if you join us late, we're talking about financial opportunities from our ever evolving cultural industry. And this evening, we're looking at the audiovisual world. We're looking at film and theater and opera. And we have Miss Kanika Ambrose with us from Canada, as well as Mr. Sobers Esprit. So let's go over to Facebook. Facebook, I see that you're alive and well. Thank you for being here. So we say good evening to Colson Lawrence. He says, good evening, ladies. Well, ladies and gentlemen. Danny Maroney, More Life. Lorraine Del Sol, great to have you on board. Good evening, everyone. She says, hi, Simone. Hi, Kanika. Lauren, you cannot say hi to Sober Student. Alvin Thomas, always, always good to have you on board. Alvin says, good to see you, my friend Sobers. David Joseph, greetings and good night to each and every one. Special greetings to the host panelists and, of course, Lambi at the console. My mom, Medina Stenhouse. Let's take a call.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear her.
Hello?
Yes, you can go ahead. Oh boy, Lambi, I think we're having some problems. My mom says, good evening, dear Rose and guests. Good evening, Medina Senhouse. Levis Esprit, Kanika is correct about the school program from a young age as part of the school curriculum. I am from Maho, plus a former musician. Growing up in Maho Government School, we had a steel pan band that was part of our school activities, with Desmond Dublin as one of our tutors to guide us along the way of developing. Let's try the phone again.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Go ahead.
Something seems to be wrong with the phone. But anyways, like I was saying earlier, I have attended a few of Kanika's plays, and they are very powerful plays. Kudos to her. Hi, Uncle Sobers.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So we read Derek's Raz's first comment. He has a second comment. He says, I've been in this industry all my life from since I was 7. Next phone call, please.
Good evening, caller. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please. Good evening, caller. Please go ahead. That person has a problem, Simone. Please go ahead.
Okay, sure. So Derek says, I've been in the industry since I was 7 years old, from Gaylords, Power Union, groups like Harambe, People's Action Theater, Whitey Kubuli, that's the dance theater, dance performance, poetry, to band music. So I have been around and in this industry. No interest by the powers that be to grow the industry. Thank you, Ra, for that contribution. And yes, we so need more to be invested in that industry. Levis Esprit would like to know what's the purpose of the Old Mill Cultural Center, since it means so much to our cultural heritage. Carl Kofi James, always great to see you. He says, bless up the entire panel. Respect Sobers. Great discussion. Thank you, Carl. Levis says Sobers has so much knowledge in culture. Wonder why he hasn't been given an office in the Ministry of Culture. And then Lorraine says, hi, Sobers. So Sobers, very important question. Why have you not been given the opportunity to guide our cultural industry? And if you care to comment on anything about the Old Mill Cultural Center as well.
Let me talk about the Old Mill Cultural Center first. Because I was among the young people who started that journey at the Old Mill back in the 1970s, when Alwyn and Ken Gardner and that group, they developed that space into what became a beehive of activity for young people, in particular in theatre, in dance, and music, and still all of these things. I think that the old mill must have a critical role to play in the growth of the sector, and particularly in terms of serving as an important hub for us to see the development of the arts. So our thinking is, some of us, we believe that the old mill should be converted into a major innovation hub for the arts. That is to say, we have spaces for rehearsals, for production, for studios, for manufacturing, and so on. So a really well set up innovation center for the arts at the national level. So that could be the main hub for us to do that kind of work. And with training happening there, with workshops and things like on an ongoing basis. However, we will need to have satellite hubs though. So while the old mill could be the major hub, we need to see satellite hubs. So for example, in Maho, we are looking at doing a small hub in Maho for music and the performing arts over a period of time. So we've started to do some work on the music sector, and we're hoping to expand and to build on that over the next few years. And the same thing could be replicated in other parts of the island. Maybe not as major as the old mill, but the old mill should definitely play that role. As so, my role, by the last 10 years or so, I have been working really hard at the regional level, frankly. I worked at the OECS Commission as the lead expert on cultural industries, and I work with a number of creative entrepreneurs in helping them to build their brand and to help them to grow their business. I am now serving more as a consultant at the hemispheric level. I work for the OAS. I do some work for the OAS. And so my hope is that Dominica will embrace the work that I am doing with the OAS, and I can help to get some work pushed forward in Dominica, because I would really love to see more happen in Dominica, and I am ready and available to help my country develop and grow in that area.
Yeah, and I can testify to that, because whenever I've lost track of how many programs we've done together, so I can attest to that the fact that you are ready and willing whenever the opportunity is made available to make a significant contribution to Dominica in that area. But let me just ask you, has a proposal been submitted for everything that you talked about for the cultural, the Old Mill Cultural Center, or is it just still in the planning?
No, okay. So one of the things that what happened recently was, through the work of the OAS, we actually did what we call a asset mapping exercise, basically to map out the assets, the cultural assets that we have in Dominica. And so we have a report that in fact highlights the strengths, the major strengths of the island. So the value, the rich heritage, the cultural assets that we have, and so on, the rich attributes. But also it highlights some of the weaknesses and made some recommendations in terms of the way forward. And one of the key recommendations from that asset mapping exercise is in fact the issue of creating innovative hubs, and the old mill being recommended as one of those hubs. The asset mapping exercise also recognized the need for us to look at issues of taxation and fiscal policies for the arts, training and development. So there's a whole slew of recommendations around the kinds of programs that we need to do, from entry level to university to just basic courses, looking at entrepreneurship. And the favored part of the program would be entrepreneurship, because we think that it's important that the creative people in the creative industry see themselves as entrepreneurs first and foremost, and to build brands. In today's world, it's about building brands. In anything that you do, in any industry, you have to have a brand. Rihanna is a brand. Hey, Jay-Z is a brand. Gordon Henderson is a brand. Let's understand that, and to build those brands and to sustain those brands, and so what is required of that. So that's some of the things that we recommend. So fiscal policy, education and training, innovation hub, networking. We recommend a lot of networking opportunities, so meetings and conferences and engagements among artists. Looking at overseas exposure. There are some parts of the United States where we can learn a lot from what they're doing in terms of carnival, for example. In New Orleans, in Austin, Austin is a music city, and we can learn from them. But also regionally, there is need for us to have more regional collaboration. So there's work now on between UNESCO the University of the Western CARICOM, there's a Caribbean, what they call the Creative Caribbean Fund. The CDB had its own fund. And what we feel is that Dominica should look at ways in which we can access those funds to be able to develop programs in support of the arts. So one of the things that we're doing now is actually we just got a grant approved for that. And we're going to be running an artist in residence program to look at carnival costumes. So that's all I would say on that at this time.
Yes, absolutely. So you're definitely working to push the cultural industry forward. And I know that you and Gregory Rabes work very closely together in many of these projects. And I just want to wish Gregory well. I know that he's not feeling his best lately, so we wish him a speedy recovery. But Kanika, back to you. So I have a question for you. Did you feel a sense of pushback? Because here you are, someone with Caribbean heritage. Was there a sense of pushback in terms of bringing the stories from the Caribbean to Canada? Did you feel that your ideas were embraced, or was there some level of resistance with wanting to tell the stories that you tell?
No, I felt that my ideas were very strongly embraced. I was actually surprised that people hadn't heard. When I first applied for my first set of grants for our place, the one about the two Caribbean immigrants, I received all of the funds that I requested from every level of government and every institution. And people were like, wow, I've never heard a story. We've never thought about Caribbean undocumented workers. These stories are not told. But of course, we're having these conversations in our living rooms, in our homes. We know about people who are marrying for papers. We know about these stories, but they weren't being brought to outside of conversations in people's homes, you know? I said, no, these are things, nothing will change and no attention and awareness will be brought if we don't have these conversations publicly. And it was very well embraced. And the audiences, so in Canadian theater, there's been a problem for a number of years, and it's changing now, about the age and the demographic, like cultural demographic of the people who attend productions. And really it's been older white people. But having plays like this, when you have stories that Caribbean people, that people of diverse background, not even just Caribbean people from all different kind of immigrant backgrounds came to this work and saw it and loved it and saw their story reflected in that. And same with the opera, you know, like Black people weren't really going to, you know, the Canadian Opera Company, you know, to see, I don't know, Cosi fan tutte, you know, whatever from Germany, you know, they weren't going to see that, but they did come to see my opera, and it's saying that there is a space and there is an interest, and there's room for our stories to be told the same way and at the same levels and financial capacity, same production capacity that these other more Eurocentric works have been traditionally told. So that was my goal with those pieces, especially the opera. I was like, no, we can have stories here, and our people are interested, and it's true. So I feel like my work has been widely and heavily embraced, which I'm really grateful for the support on so many levels from so many people. Like, we really came out and showed up and supported and showed that there's interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so just mute your mic for a quick second. I think there's a little bit of a feedback, and I'm coming right to you. But you know, Kanika is interesting because I'm sitting here thinking another great story that is familiar to many of us as West Indians is the whole idea of women going overseas to have their baby to gain citizenship. But then I'm starting to think, well, I mean, should we really be putting all these stories outside because the lawmakers may come for us?
No, I think that the lawmakers, when we have these stories, it shows that their laws aren't fair, you know? Because, for example, one of the reasons why I started to think about this was because we were trying to sponsor my mother-in-law to come and live with us. Mm-hmm. And even just to come to our wedding, she was denied a visa. And we're like, man, there's so much red tape for just a simple thing like attending your child's wedding, you know,
Yeah.
or coming to live with a family member. There's so much red tape. You know, why is it that certain members of the world are more valuable citizen than certain others? You know, like why is it that, you know, somebody who doesn't have a university degree, even some people who do have a university degree, you know, have difficulty immigrating to where they want to in the world, you know? So I think that it exposes the biases in certain governments' value systems and the people who they inherently let out. So I think that the exposure makes people talk about it, makes people push for change. I was also concerned when I wrote it. I said, "Oh man, am I gonna get people in trouble?" You
Yeah.
know, but it did not happen that way.
Now, is there an option to see any of your production visually for film or websites?
So the beauty about theater is it works better live.
Yes,
so,
yes,
so there
yes.
is archival video, but that's not really to be viewed publicly. I do have work. So I think you were talking about digital. So during the pandemic, a lot of my work pivoted to be created for digital spaces. So I do have some operatic work on YouTube.
Mhm.
Um, I created a couple of operas, shorter operas. One for Opera Philadelphia that's on YouTube, and then a couple for a tapestry opera that are comedic short
Yeah,
pieces.
if you have any links you could send for me in the private chat area, I'd be more than happy to share it because I'm sure our audience would be very interested in
Yeah, sure,
seeing
sure.
some of your
Yeah,
work. So if you could post it in the private chat area on the StreamYard, and I
yeah.
can go ahead and share it to the Facebook. That would be wonderful. And so it's back to you. So we talk a lot about what's going on, but we also have to talk about the evolution, right? So now let's talk a little bit more about audio visual. Let us talk about more about, the digital revolution and the implication for our cultural industries.
Yeah. So I think one of the areas we see probably the fastest amount of movement and growth is in the audiovisual sector. Young people in particular have embraced the technology, and you see young people creating stuff on their phones, on their laptop, and you see it in terms of music videos, in terms of short documentaries, and that kind of thing. And so I think that is an area that we need to probably put some more attention on, and to provide training and exposure to young people, because that is probably an area clearly where we can get our young people to participate much more, say, than say theater or the other aspect of the industry. So and the audiovisual sector has in fact embraced a lot of new technology. They're using a lot of technology for writing, for production, and editing. So there's a lot of new stuff that's coming on, and it's to the extent that some of that things is even coming on so quickly that we cannot keep up to the technology. So yes, we have seen a lot of young people involved in that area. But what we're seeing though is mostly in terms of music videos and short documentaries. You see them on YouTube and elsewhere. I think what we need to see is to be able to tell stories in short films, feature films, and those areas. I think that is where we're lacking in terms of getting more persons involved and engaged in telling stories that much more meaningful, much more engaging. That doesn't mean to say that we are not seeing some of that happening. So, for example, Michael Lees from Dominica, I don't know if you heard that name, did a piece on his experience during Maria, which was a major piece of work. And it really gained a lot of attraction and international attention. We have people like Sheldon Kazimi, who
Yep.
has been doing a lot of work, and kudos to Sheldon. He's probably one of the top videographers we have on the country in the island. So we have some of that happening, but they need the support. That is what is missing. They need the support. They need more exposure to so that they can create works to take to festivals, because there are lots of festivals, film festivals, where we can show our work. Like in the Caribbean, we have the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. In Curacao, there's a festival in Curacao and a few other islands. Mostly though, in the Eastern Caribbean, the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival is the number one festival for us. A number of Dominicans have actually attended that festival. Alwyn Bully was there, Sandra Vivas was there, and I know Clement Richards was there, and we saw, I say Alwyn Bully, yes, Alwyn Bully with Osei and the Masquerader. So that is a platform that we can, in fact, have our work, promote our work. So what we have to do now? Hey, I think across the board we see the same thing. It is about exposure, training, building capacity, and just giving support.
Yeah.
So financial
support, because
support.
you know, one of the things I like to do with this program
Yeah.
is to continue to answer that question that was
Financial
posed
support.
a few months ago. If not the CBI, then what? And look at all the areas we can invest the billions of dollars we have earned from the CBI and poured into our cultural industries, so that we can move the industries forward. The same way we talked about agriculture, the same way we talked about so
tourism,
many other sectors of our
yes.
economy. You know,
So-
so the support is lacking.
Yes, we've been talking about.
And we've had a conversation as well, Sobers, about the national policy that does exist. And even when I spoke to Mr. Mathieu the other day, he reminded me of the national policies that are not being implemented. You know, so there's only so much we can do on an individual level if we do not feel that we have the national support to move these programs forward. But I'm still hopeful because Kanika is still sitting here.
That's right. And it's her generation that must take it and run with it.
Yes.
You know, my generation, I think we've done as much as we could. I think it is her generation and my daughter's generation that must take it and run with it, and to help us to become world class.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, an important question for the both of you, the threat of artificial intelligence. So I think we've seen artificial intelligence. Yes. So let's talk about it. Good and bad. Good and bad. Let's talk about it.
I mean, the good is that it clearly you are able to do things in a much more in a much more effective way, faster way in most instances. The bad is that we're going to lose a lot of our creative people along the line in terms of their work, their ability to gain employment and support, and of course the copying that we see and the masking. So again, just like what they say in the United States and other parts of the developed world, we in this part of the world must pay attention to what is happening and ensure that we regulate those things when they come to our shores. You know, that is the only thing we can do. We cannot stop the technology. We cannot stop the advancement in the use of this technology. But we can, in fact, regulate them so that we can benefit much more from them. That's all we could say at this time.
Yeah, I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just in terms of regulations, which often take a while to come into play, and people do get hurt in the meantime. And staying on top of the advancements, because you know, if you're regulating something that's already passed, say that already happened like 3 years ago, you know, the technological advancements have surpassed where you're at. So it's in terms of staying on top of it and keeping the regulations quick and on top of it that will protect the people whose creative intelligence need to be protected.
Because then the concern becomes, can, for example, AI write a script and take away your job, Kanika?
They can, but what they don't have is I think that they don't have my unique lived experience.
Exactly.
Which is what
you can't take that away from you. They can't take that away from you.
Exactly. I'm like, it's very difficult to have the exact circumstances that created this mind. So I think that's what it's. But we have tried it. As I said, I just graduated from television writing school, and some of my colleagues just jokingly went into an AI program and said, put in the parameters for a screenplay, and it can write a screenplay. It can, and it can come up
It
with jokes.
can.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw this Afrobeat guy producer in Nigeria
Mm-hmm.
actually using AI and real music. So he's producing music from AI as well as his own creation and merging the two together in a magical formula. And we're gonna see a lot of that happening. So
Mhm.
so here's the thing. It means therefore that we have to invest as well in digital transformation education, in the education of digital education has to
Mm-hmm.
be an area of, and it's not just in the simplest of ways. We have to up the game.
Mm-hmm.
We have to ensure that our young people have the best skills in those areas. Otherwise, the world will leave us behind. They're
Yep.
already leaving us behind. But I think that is an area where the world, irrespective of the size of the country or countries, can in fact impact or push their way through. Once you are committed to it, once you understand what is involved, you can in fact, irrespective of your size. So I think we now need to say, hey, the technologies are here to stay. We are in the age of technology, and so if we want to be major players in this industry, and so here's the thing:
Mm-hmm.
the economy, Dominica's economy, and I think that is a point that we have to recognize as well. The economy of the 21st century is going to be very different from the economy of the 20th century. The sectors that we focus on 50 years ago, 60 years ago, going to be very different from what we're going to be doing now. So where some of the traditional sectors will be important. So you cannot stop producing food. Food is going to be an important part. So you have to still manufacture and so on. But it is knowledge. Today's world is about knowledge. It's about digital. If we want to gain a foothold in the world, if we want our young people to be much more expressive and to be players, major players on the world stage, we
Mm-hmm.
have to focus attention in those areas. And so that is where the thinking has to be.
Yep.
It's about creativity. It's using culture. That is why we're talking about these things,
Yes.
because we're already there. The world is there already. The world is producing over $1 trillion in that sector. And so what is our portion? What is our share in that? Whether it's in festival tourism, whether it's in music, whether it's in design and fashion or the apparel industry, in performing arts, in visual arts, in book publishing. So those areas of the creative industry, creative and cultural industries, what is our take? And so for us to have a take in that industry, what is the level of investment we are putting, both from a financial standpoint, but also from an industry standpoint too? Because creators must work hard. Your candidate said she be doing that since she was what? How old?
16, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah,
creators must
professional.
understand that this is not something that you just get up and do.
Right.
This requires a lot of work and sacrifice and patience and collaboration.
Derek will tell you that is a word that is very difficult to combine, Dominica,
Well,
collaboration.
otherwise, listen, the beneficiaries from the sector, this global industry, do they work on their own?
Nope.
They don't know. Did nobody work on their own? It's impossible. Whether the greatest musicians, the greatest fashion designers, they all team with other people, other geniuses. Rihanna is not $1 billion enterprise on her own. Jay-Z is not $1 billion enterprise on his own. And we can go on and on. Microsoft and all of those big companies, they had to bring in other talent. They had to bring in other experiences. And so we have to do the same thing. But we see it in the Caribbean, we already seen that kind of movement in the region. That filmmakers are working together, musicians are working together, theater people, Alwyn and them used to work together. That generation, they work together. So we have to continue in that journey, that legacy that has been passed on from Alwyn and others. We have to work together. Of course, we have individual geniuses. There's no question about that. But we have to recognize the value in working together.
Is that something you can speak to, Kanika, the importance of collaboration?
Yeah, it's 100% necessary. Like, as I said, I'm a playwright, or I'm a writer, but that means like my work doesn't exist if there isn't a director, if there isn't actors or singers, if there isn't designers, people, social media people, marketing people, artistic directors and producers who fund the work, who get the money that it needs in order to exist. There's so many. Like, if you come to one of my shows or you see the amount of credits, like the credit list is so long. There's so many people, like even somebody who makes the wigs, all of that is collaboration to bring forth the vision, because if there's not those people, then the vision doesn't work, the whole picture doesn't work. So, and even in screenwriting, even if I'm the creator of a show, I work in a writer's room with several other writers. So it's not one voice ever, even though it may appear to be. It's collaboration is the only way, unless you're going to do everything. I don't know. Maybe there's some people who do everything, write, direct, act,
No, not in today's world. Not in today's world.
This world, yeah.
That's why you say it's a whole ecosystem. It's a whole ecosystem. You need producers, you need actors, you need marketers, you need legal people, you need accountants. You need all of these people to bring together all this.
And with all that sobers, you need a sense of professionalism, because I'm always fascinated by trying to reach out to some people, and the responses you get, it's just not very professional. I'm reaching out to you as an artist to have you on a program, and rather than saying thank you for contacting me, please see my man, and please reach out to my manager instead, you just send me your manager's number. That's not being professional. So with all that goes professionalism. And I think that is something that some of us are lacking, that needs to be nurtured in Dominica. So we still have quite a ways to go. But Kanika, what is next for you? Are you looking into film and television?
Yes, I've started writing my own television series.
Wow.
And there's a producer on board. We're just doing the final paperwork, and then hoping to get it to network television soon. As you know, or I'm not sure how many people are aware, there is an active strike. There's actually 2 strikes. So that's affecting the progress of the work, unfortunately. But hopefully, despite that, things will move forward in terms of its trajectory. As I also mentioned, I'm soon to have a baby, so that will stall things a little bit.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so that'll stall things a little bit as well, but hoping that in the next year something will come forward. As well, I am continuing to get commissions, so like people are funding me to continue to write new plays. So I have a number of new plays in the works that should come forth in the next months and years. So make sure to, I'm sure that the people who are supporting and who I send my work to will continue to send it out, and you'll find out about it when it comes.
Oh yeah, and congratulations. I have a vision of us producing so many more Kanikas as Sobers, so that we can see people thriving in the cultural industry. But here is what I want to talk about as well. You know, back to Asa Banton as Sobers, and you would probably be more familiar with this than
Mm-hmm.
Kanika. So I've been observing Asa Banton because I'm a people watcher. And what we've seen Asa did recently is that his breakfast fest, okay, let's put the music aside, right? Let's put the music aside just for a minute. But
Yeah.
look at his production sobers. Not only has he found a way to strategize using social media to promote
Mm-hmm.
Breakfast Fest on a year-round basis, but now Breakfast Fest now includes a dinner, an island tour. You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
festival tourism is the word you used.
Yeah.
So Asa Banton
Yeah.
continues to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you like Asa or not is a personal
Yeah.
beef.
Irrelevant. Yeah.
But look at what he's doing and sobers.
Mm-hmm.
And let
Yeah.
us imagine we have Creole Festival coming up in October, right? Let us
Mm-hmm.
imagine taking what he's doing in terms of evolving his own event into
Yeah.
something so much more bigger than it is. So let us talk about evolving, the evolution that needs to go on with many of what we're doing to make them more
Well,
profitable.
yeah. So first of all, recognize that festivals and events are a critical part of the cultural and creative industries, and it is a high value, very high value, particularly in the Caribbean, where people looking to the region to unwind, to have a good time, to immerse in the culture and the music in particular. And we see in Dominica particularly over the last 25 or so years, that we have in fact instituted a program where we've been promoting this segment of the industry. So we enhanced Carnival. We've marketed the World Creole Music Festival as a major global event. We saw Jazz and Creole emerging, and it's now 10 years in the making. And now we have those events, private events like Issa Banton Breakfast Fest. We have some village festivals, village feasts, if you want to call them festivals. And so that is something that, again, we have to invest in and support. And I was talking about the brand issue. It's a
Mhm.
brand that is a brand.
Yes.
It's a brand that is a brand. And so he's leveraged his brand, his musical brand, to build one of the biggest um, festivals in Dominica. It is going to become, I believe, one of the biggest events in Dominica on the festival calendar. So here it is, an important brand in the industry, using that to leverage and to create much more opportunities, not just for himself, but to a whole range of stakeholders,
Yeah, and the
people,
economic impact.
and the economic impact that it's having. So that speaks to the value of this segment of the industry. And we see it in places like Trinidad and Jamaica and Barbados. Those events generate millions of dollars, you know. And so, but the problem is we don't measure those things. So we I don't know if anybody did any kind of measurement of the impact of the breakfast fete. What we might see is that it will probably pass in terms of the tourism numbers. We might see 200 or 500 or 1,000 visitors came as tourists, but we will probably not see the economic value, the dollar value of that on the economy. And so that is part of making the argument for us for the investment in culture. Because if the policymakers and if the country as a whole recognize that culture and the arts have an impact on the economy and contributing tremendously to the economy in terms of dollar value, the economic impact, we think that we can make a stronger case. So part of the work we have to do is to measure these festivals, measure the economic impact on the economy, and let's make our case. You see that? We are generating $50 million from festivals every year. What are we getting back?
Mhm.
So that's part of the work that we have to do. So yes, so kudos to Asa and his team for building this event and making it a major part of the festival tourism offering in Dominica.
And especially during a time when there's not much going on, because in August,
August, yeah,
Carnival is
not
over,
much.
Creole
Yeah,
Festival is not quite around the corner. So
yeah,
at a time when it is pretty much a desert, he has
yes.
created this particular event. And I like what Alvin Thomas says. He says, imagine one guy, Asa Banton, can do that, and a whole festival commission crew have difficulty putting together a World Creole Festival. So I know Soba's not going to touch that one.
Yeah, because I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think the World Creole Music Festival has, in fact, emerged to
Yes,
be one of the regions, not just Dominica, one of the regions, the leading music festival. So,
right.
no.
Right, right. Yes. So, Kanika, any advice for anyone who would like to follow in your footsteps? And again, thank you so much for stopping by to tell us all about your journey, your challenges, your successes. And we know that there is so much more to come for you. But any advice for those who are interested in following your footsteps? And guys on Facebook, keep the comments coming, because I am going to come over and read them in a little bit. So please keep the comments coming. I see them and I will read them in a little while.
Um, as some of the artists who commented on Facebook have expressed the frustration for the lack of support, I understand that. I could feel that frustration, having these conversations over years and decades and not having much change and not having the support that you need. Um, I feel that frustration. In Canada, we have different sources of frustration. So it sounds like, we're ahead in a lot of ways, but there's still a lot of things that artists here are having conversations about making better. Like, for example, um, the arts, sometimes can be a difficult industry to be in when you have a family. For example, the sometimes it can be unstable. You have to really get smart about how you use your resources. Sometimes there's a big payout, and then there are other times where there isn't, and you have to be smart about that. And also sometimes there can be long and late hours, and sometimes there are 6 and 7 day work weeks, and not so much support for childcare. So there's a big push in the arts here for support for parents and people giving care to older people, to continue to support them and to give them access to careers. So I would say, everywhere has its challenges, but nevertheless you persist. You have to know where you are and what your goal is, and what your vision for yourself is, and how to get there and find creative ways to get there. I'm not saying there's not barriers. There's of course barriers, but you have to create the vision for yourself, and see where it is that you want to get to, and find the resources that you can to get there. I agree. Like, I wish that there was more support, and I hope that it does come. And I someday would love to support that, if there's ways that I can do. So, my advice is just to know yourself and know your value.
Think I was muted. Yes, and to be steadfast with everything that you're doing. Do you have any social media, anywhere we can follow you and keep apprised on what's going on with you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I think you just type it. I think it's just Kanika Ambrose.
Ambrose on
Yeah,
Instagram. And for those
yeah,
listening on the radio, Kanika is K as in kite, Anika. So Kanika, and then Ambrose, Ambrose. So
yeah.
Kanika Ambrose on Instagram if you're interested in following Kanika's work. Sobers, over to you. So any thoughts you still want to share with us at this point?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we recognize that, first of all, we recognize that there's value in art and culture, in particularly in this time. That's always been of great value, because they have helped to keep us together as a society. They've, been a point of connection among communities and islands and countries. But I think we recognize that now more than ever the economic value of art and culture in our island, and therefore we need to be able to embrace it and to support it, to invest more into it, and to help us to build stronger networks. We have to be able to support our artists in ways that we haven't done in the past 50, 60 years. Because the truth is, the successful artists we've seen over the past 6 decades or so have done it mostly on their own. Times have changed. We probably will never get an Alwyn Bully or Gordon Henderson again, with natural talent, natural ability, who could just release that kind of energy and creativity on the world. And so we may have to go the route of supporting our artists more and nurturing the talents from a very young age. And so the thinking has to be different. Art and culture cannot be seen as pastime. It cannot be seen as a side thing. And cultural development cannot be seen as siwu or fet. It has to be seen as an industry, just like we have any kind of industry, whether it's tourism or manufacturing or agriculture. We know that those kind of changes won't come overnight, so I think we have to have more of those kind of conversations, and we have to have these conversations at different levels as well. So why it is important for us to have it in the media, I think we need to have it among young people, in the schools, in the colleges. We need to have it in communities, and we need to have it among artists as well. So that we can better understand the value, better understand the significance of it in a modern day Dominica and a modern day Caribbean. And then to figure out now through programs, through interventions, the kinds of things that we need to do. So we already identify education, financial support, but policy, new set of policy. The policy that we have in culture, they're about 30 years old. We need to have new and more progressive policy, where art is seen more than just from its natural form, but also as an economic viability standpoint. We also have to recognize the need for us, as I say, to work with other Caribbean countries and to network more globally. Dominica, we have relations with countries all over the world. And many of these capitals, many of these countries, they can provide us with support. And we can, in fact, exchange some of what we have with some of these countries, whether it's Canada, United States, in countries in Africa. So we need to explore that. So let's leverage our trade agreements, our cooperation agreements with countries around the world to advance our art and culture, the same way we do in agriculture or with tourism, because there's great benefit to be derived from that. But I think also our artists and those of us who want to have businesses in the arts must also to change the thinking in terms of how we operate. So the need for us to have the kind of discussion and training in terms of business development, entrepreneurship, so that we have to operate as businesses, as a brand. And if you have a brand, what do you do for brand? So you have to register your brand. You have to be legally set up. You have to have people to manage it, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that we have to do. And there's some of the social issues that we can talk about, social impact that we talk about, the gender issues, the equality issues, the sexism that still exists today, that we have to recognize and to do something with some of that. And we see it every day. I think some of us recognize it more than others. So I think these are just some ideas that we need to really focus on. But I would say that for young people, we can provide more support in there's some areas. Music is obviously one. but visual arts, animation. There's a whole world for animation if we provide the necessary training and support. Because we have young minds, creative minds, guys can do some really great things with their hands. So we can bring in animation companies, and from wherever, and to work with these young people. In film, we have stories to tell. So we need to be able to develop script writing skills, production and editing skills. And so we talk about theater. One of the biggest problems in theater here is we need to have a new cadre or a whole cadre of theater professionals to work the theater scene back in Dominica. So writers, directors, producers, and others. And of course, the spaces. So we need performing spaces. You talk about Arawak and other spaces, so our actors and the others can work on. So it's quite a lot, but I think that is contributing to the conversation. And
Yeah, absolutely. Kanika, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna jump in and say, and the part of the entrepreneurship is understanding your financial value and worth and demanding compensation.
yes.
I've had a lot. I no longer work for free, but I've had a lot
Good for you.
of people and a lot in my years of being requested to work for free. And I did it quite a bit. It was more possible when I was younger and living with my parents still. But as I was like, no, I have needs, I have to eat. I have a mortgage, I have children now. Like I cannot work for free. And my work takes a lot of time. Like it takes years to write a play and to develop an idea. And that has a value and a significance. And so understanding that value is a very important part of sustainability in this industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of that in Dominica Sobers,
Yeah.
wanting people to work for free. We see a lot of that in Dominica Sobers.
Yeah, some industries people value because they don't see the value of those industries. So art and culture is one of the areas where we say, boy, you can't do it for us for free. I mean, if you go to a doctor, you must pay the doctor fee. If you go to a lawyer, you must pay it's on the board outside. A doctor visit about $100, $80. You have to pay it. Somebody have to pay it before you go inside. And so so it has to be the same kind of thinking. That there is value and there's worth. And as I said, the elephant in the room is intellectual property. Although we don't value that at all here. So I was going to say something I was going to say, but people do events and they don't pay. Nobody pay for intellectual property. They say, oh, the artist is going to be performing there, so we don't have to pay for it.
Wow.
So we have to have conversations about that too. Because
that's the next conversation. I'll invite you in.
Yes. Well, I'm not an expert in that field, but I am very, very supportive of people paying for intellectual property. The artist's bread and butter is his or her intellectual property. Whether it's music, whether it's fashion, whether it's film, you cannot just take somebody's work and just use it with impunity. You have to pay for it. And so we need a whole set of education about that. And also our artists now, how do you register your work? And make it a value to you long term? Because music is for 60 years, 60 years of value. If you miss out on that, 60 years of value. So imagine if you do a song in 1995 and you didn't register it. You know what? You've lost. So those kind of conversations we need to have. Some people say, oh, it's about echo, it's about this, but register with a copyright body that you have trust and confidence in. So that is something that we need to have a conversation on, separate and apart.
Yeah, and we also need to support our organizations, because I remember at one point I was hearing about AMP, Association of Music
That's
Producers,
right.
and I haven't heard anything of them as of
That's
late.
right. Yeah.
So, are they even still in existence? Because that
So
was one of their mandates
so
to
we need to have
encourage people
strong
to register.
associations, strong
To
professional bodies have. That's what we're saying. It's not just the state. The state has to play its role, but
yes,
industry itself must play its part.
hmm
So we need to have strong functioning bodies.
right.
In the
Yes,
US, why you think they have strikes in the US? Why you think art writers strikes? Because they are writers guild and artists guild. These are professional bodies. Because if they don't like something, they can strike and they make demand.
Mhm. Mhm.
But
yes.
if you haven't got a functioning body, who's gonna talk for you? Who's gonna talk on your behalf?
Mhm. So we have a lot of work to do at many levels, but we remain encouraged because we see the promise and the
Yeah.
possibility of what we can create. Because Dominica is such a beautiful place, and we have such great talent, and there's no reason we shouldn't be immersed in the film and theater industries to bring that out and to bring it out to the world and tell our stories. But I just want to thank you, Sobers, as always, for being on this program. Kanika, it was lovely meeting you. Congratulations. I hope everything goes well with the new baby. And,
Thank
we're looking to hear a lot more from you, a
Yeah.
lot more success. We're putting it out in the universe that you will continue to rise and evolve and to be successful. Let's take a few comments before we wind down. Derek Ra Peter say, that's true. Can't let the cat out of the bag. Taking in consideration situation we are faced with when something immigration laws, it gives reason to tighten up the grip and the chokehold. We have little or no promise for our youth. They are struggling, so we are careful in giving up a break, as we used to call it. Yes. So, Ra, thank you so much for your contributions. He also says, could you imagine that so many out did not get the chance to get out in these other countries and awarded the opportunity to develop themselves in areas that they are now being successful. The funds are not made available to these people who have the ability, so many promises, yet no materialization of funds being readily available.
Yeah,
Levis Esprit,
you're
building.
right.
Go ahead,
Oh, I
Kenny.
was just gonna speak to that quickly. Is um, like the reality is, and another reason why it took such a long time for me to get to where I am. The reality is, post George Floyd, art support is very different than pre George Floyd art support. I was applying for funding for shows and not getting the funding before. Because the arts bodies like here were run by a certain demographic where we weren't represented on those larger government scales, and those decision making bodies. But things have changed in our favor, you
Yes,
know,
yes.
as of the past few years. So you're right, it was harder for artists like myself to make it, and there, it was not because of a shortage of talent, it was not because they weren't applying. There were systemic barriers in the bodies that fund, even here. So I happen to be at a place where I'm at the right time, you know, where I am getting that support, but it hasn't been always the case. So yes, acknowledging this person's comments for
Mhm.
sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Derek, for that. We read Alvin's comments already regarding ASAP Banton. Let's take a couple more. We have so many comments, guys. Unfortunately, I will not be able to take all of them, but let's take a couple more. Level Sobers, you need to go back to grassroots level in every community in Dominica to make it happen. Alvin, I know, it pains me as someone who was there with the Honorable Norris Prevost when the idea was conceptualized. So let's just make sure I took comments from everyone. So guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for
Before
being
before 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 we leave,
here.
that's what the fruit challenge you can hear, that when you after the baby, we want you to come down and to be a residential director for your one of your productions here. So we'll talk about that.
We'll
So
talk about it.
at some
I'm
point we
planning
want you to come
on
down
coming.
here and to do a play. basically.
I'm planning on coming and bringing my children next year
Yes, of course.
anyway,
Yes,
so
that's
I'll
right.
be
Good,
around.
good.
Wow. Yeah, so that's what we do. We make the connections, roots connections. We connect the people, we connect the talent, and we connect Dominicans overseas and at home to help to move Dominica forward. Lambi, is anyone calling? Okay, good. I saw you put on your headset, so I wasn't for sure. But again, thank you. Thank you, Kanika. Thank you, Sobas. Thank you to our audience. Thank you to Lambi on the console, Mr. G, showing DJ Shan, our Facebook and our YouTube live audience for being here as we talked about financial opportunities from our ever evolving cultural industry and the strides that Dominicans are making in film, theater, audiovisual sectors, and the opportunities and challenges we face. So, again, we will continue to showcase the people, the projects, the initiatives geared towards moving Dominica forward, especially as it relates to financial opportunities. Because as we can see, there are so many people doing so many important things behind the scene. So at Roots Connections and Push Past Tense, we will continue to showcase their work, and we will continue to connect them as we did connect Sobers and Kanika, so that we can bolster the effort for enhancing our human capacity and moving Dominica forward. So remember to follow Q95 FM Radio on Facebook and follow Push Past 10 on Facebook, as well as Q95 FM Radio on YouTube. And for everything else we are doing to advance Dominica, you can visit us at pushpast10.com, pushpast10.com. And I will continue to look forward to the Lorraine Del Sols and everybody else who reaches out to me to say, hey, I have a great guest, a great Dominican, a great descendant of Dominica, a great friend of Dominica who's doing important work. And we would like you to showcase their work. So if you would like to get in touch with me, you can reach me at pushpast10@gmail.com. pushpast10@gmail.com. So with that, we say good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being a part of this conversation. And we can just say good evening and bye to the audience, Kanika, Ambrose, Sobas Esprit Lambi. Have a good evening. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Simone, Mathieu, this was Roots Connections. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yo! Rastafari.